Today we're going to continue chapter 17 and 18 from the book of Judges. Let me just share the screen with everyone on Zoom.
Well, let's say hello to your mother.
Yeah,
Hi, Mom.
say hello to my mother.
Oh, hello.
Steve, yeah. We want to remind ourselves, okay, that these chapters are talking about the Levite from Bethlehem who moved to the tribe of Ephraim, acquired by Micah, who built his own private temple at home, okay, and kind of like did yeah yeah a little bit distracting, and he built his private temple, put the ephod there, okay, where he kind of like asked God for different questions, and gone through this whole process of competing with the main and legitimate and only temple that should be standing, right? We read that in chapter 17 and 18. Were you here? You weren't here last week, right, Chaya? Chaya, you were here? Oh, okay, sorry, you were, okay.
Nothing.
Okay. But the story sounds familiar, right? And then we saw that, you know, that was like the wrong thing to do, and we saw the phrase that repeated itself again. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did as they pleased. This is the theme of the last chapters of the book of Judges. Terrible times. Everyone does whatever they feel like. No king. There's only these judges that emerge from time to time. Everything's chaotic, and therefore we need a king. Is the subtext. The text will never say there's a need for a king. Okay, and we kept explaining that. That's because God is really considered the only king, and it's something that the Goyim do, the non-Jews. They're the ones that, you know, put kings and everything, right? We Jews don't need that because we know how to behave among ourselves, and we know how to control ourselves and be nice people to each other, so we don't need a king. Okay, but basically the book of Judges comes to really fight against that assumption. Okay, please turn off your cell phones. And what?
I better turn it off.
Yeah, you have to put it on silent.
I have it on silent.
You just took it silent.
Yeah.
Who was that high
priest at the time? Is it said there?
It's probably Pinchas, who's the priest at that time, or his son. We'll see him later on in the next chapter. So when all of this is happening and a competing temple is being built, that's the wrong thing to do. And then in chapter 18, okay, we read about the tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan searching for their own space, okay, because they never got proper acquisition. Can I have some water, please? So, proper acquisition of their area, okay, which is supposed to be by the coast. And we realize that the people who are controlling the coast are the Philistines of those days. Thank you so much. And then they go, and on their way to find a new land, they find this Levite at Micah's temple. They steal him from there. They bribe him with money. They say, well, you'll make a better salary with us. Okay, we'll give you like a lifetime salary, a very good job, and you'll be the priest for a big tribe, not like a privatized family. So he's like, sounds like a good deal, and he goes with them, and they go to a city called Laish, which is a very peaceful and quiet city, and they burn it down. And And it seems like the Bible is not happy with what they're doing. And that's kind of like how that chapter ends. We didn't have time to read any commentary on the chapter, so that's what I wanted to do today. I hope people on Zoom could see the PowerPoint presentation I'm sharing. So let's have a summary of what we read. Yes, Naomi.
You made an important statement when you were doing the review that we couldn't get along with each other, even though the Goyim were establishing kings in order to get along with each other. But it appears that with the action of this one group that came in, the tribe of Dan, they actually not only couldn't get along with other Jews, other Israelis, they couldn't get along with other people in their surroundings either.
Yeah.
And so, is there a history of God intervening mostly with Jews together and among each other, or with Jews and what's the bigger history? Jews conflict with other people.
That's a very good question. I would say it's more rare for God to intervene in a situation between Jews and other nations, but between the Israelites and the other nations. Okay. It's more common that God intervenes in situations within the Israelites, between the tribes, trying to bring peace between them. If they're fighting, to punish them, if they're not worshiping him, then he would bring other nations to oppress the Jews, the Israelites, back as a punishment to them. That's kind of like the overall themes of the Bible as I recall. So the story of Judges 17:18, story of idolatry, tribal chaos, and the search for identity. The last chapters of the book of Judges are not arranged in chronological order. They are an appendix showing what life looked like spiritually and morally during the period of the Judges. The refrain that appears repeatedly is, in those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. That sentence is really the theme of these chapters. The events probably take place fairly early in the period of the Judges, not near the end. We know this because in Judges 18:30, we are told that the priest serving the tribe of Dan was Jonathan, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses. And some manuscripts and traditions preserves Moses, though later scribes suspended the letter Nun, so it could also be read as Menashe, out of respect for Moses. Okay, so you remember we saw that last week? I'll show that to you again. Okay, here it's like Mem Shin Hey, that's Moshe. And you see this Nun that's kind of like inserted in the ancient manuscripts, it says Moshe. Okay, so this guy from the Levite who goes and betrays God is a grandson of Moshe. That's quite an embarrassment. That's a big embarrassment to Moses. Okay, he took the people of Egypt out of the people of Israel out of Egypt. That's kind of like, so they added the Nun there to make it Menashe. But it really makes much more sense that it's Moshe because he's the Levite, right? And Gershom is the son of Moshe. So it's very clear who this guy is. And it's interesting to see how they try to change it, right? If Jonathan was Moses' grandson, these events happened only a generation or two after the conquest of Canaan. And this is shocking. Israel has only recently entered the land. And Joshua is gone. The people have already begun abandoning God's covenant. Okay, so it's like they go into the land of Israel. Joshua conquers the land, or at least big parts of it, because we know he didn't conquer all of it. And after he dies, the people go astray. There's like, we don't have a leader. Okay, that reminds us a little bit of the golden calf, right? The golden calf where Moses goes missing for 40 days and 40 nights. Okay, he didn't go partying. He went up to Mount Sinai to get them the Torah. But the people of Israel is like, oh, Moses is gone. Why did he take us out of Egypt? They go to Aaron. There's like, we need a different leader. We need a different God. Okay, it's like we're upset. So the people of Israel don't have a lot of patience when they don't have a proper, visible leader. Trusting in God, which is not a visible image, is much more difficult for them.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I have a general question. I mean, from creation, we had brothers battling, and as we go through Abraham, we got, Isaac and Jacob and Esau, and the people, all the way through with Moses in the desert, the people were always complaining, they were always rebellion. So it's like this is human nature. I mean, it's not. Why is it a big surprise? This is the way people are.
Well, I think that's a very good question, but I think we need to look at it maybe from another perspective of comparing the Bible to other holy books. If you look at the New Testament, if you look at the Quran, they don't talk about these things so much. Okay, they don't bring human faults in this way. And these are the leaders. These are like the heroes of the nation. In Judaism, okay, we confront that. We like, even though these are the flawed people, it's like, this is how humanity is. And you could still be a leader. You could still repent. You need to know that you're not doing the right thing. Okay, but there's a way to change things. There are no perfect human beings, like in Christianity or in Islam. The leaders are like perfect people, no flaws at all. Okay, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, they all have their flaws. King David, okay, they're human beings that are complex. They're just like us. It might be easier to relate in that sense, and also give that sense that these are human beings. Like we don't glorify them and make them like gods. Okay, so I think that's like another perspective of looking at that.
Okay.
So going back to to the next slide. God had established one central sanctuary. At this point, the tabernacle, the Mishkan, was located in Shiloh. Okay, the ark was kept, sacrifices were supposed to be offered, priests served, and people came on pilgrimage. Okay, and the Torah repeatedly insists that Israel should worship at the place God chooses, not wherever people feel like creating their own shrines. This is emphasized in the Torah again and again. God will choose a place which eventually will become Jerusalem, but until Jerusalem is established and the temple in Jerusalem is established, the temple was, at the beginning it was for 40 years, it was in the desert, moving from one place to the other. Last week we read it moved 42 times from place to place. And then when they arrived into Israel, it was at the Gilgal, then they established it permanently in Shiloh, then it moved to, I believe, Gifon or Nov, and then to Bethel. Yeah.
Do we know historically when it became acceptable to have a synagogue?
That's a very good question. In the Second Temple period, okay, it became more acceptable to have a synagogue as long as you don't sacrifice there. You could pray, you could read Torah, but you're not allowed to make it like a mishkan, like a tabernacle.
It means we can't sacrifice.
I'm sorry, we can barbecue. We'll barbecue. And sometimes it's good, like it's like it smells like the smoke goes up. Maybe even God is happy. But just like the temple, but you cannot sacrifice in that sense. Like
I thought we have archaeological evidence that shows whether they were called synagogues or not, but they were places of worship just for the practical reason that not everybody could just travel to Jerusalem to the temple for the sacrifices.
Well, so you're going more in depth. I didn't want to go into so much depth, but there are different periods of time where more places of altars were permissible. Okay, so there's like an altar where you have like a private, not a private, you have like a offering of gratitude, okay, where you're allowed to do that, as opposed to the more sacrificial sacrifices, the ones that are more mandated by the Torah, the ones that we read about. So there were periods of time where you were allowed to offer sacrifices in a certain way. For example, where I grew up in near the city of Beersheba, there's actually an altar there that you could see on the Tel of Beersheba. We might even go there when we are in Israel in December, and you actually see the remaining of the altar there. Now, whether that was permissible by the Torah or was just one of these private places, it's not clear. We don't have,
But Abraham went to Beersheba and he built a
right. And we also read in the book of Judges that different places were also, like Samson's mother and father, they offered sacrifice to the man of God. So people could do that, in their private places. Okay, but not the religious ones that were mandated by the Torah. Like on Shabbat, you're supposed to sacrifice a certain amount. That was only permissible in the temple. Okay, because that's the pilgrimage that you're supposed to go to the temple 3 times a year. That's where it comes from, and that's also to bring all the people of Israel together. The whole concept of 3 times a year you will all come to the temple and gather together. That's to bring all the people together. Yet during the period of Judges, many people ignored this command. Okay, a man named Micah, Micha in Hebrew, lives in the hill country of Ephraim. His mother had 1,100 pieces of silver. That was an enormous amount of money. Micah stole it. The mother then gives him the curse. When the money disappeared, Micah's mother did something very common in the ancient Near East. She pronounced a curse, an imprecation. She essentially declared whoever stole this money is cursed. In ancient times, people believed spoken blessings and curses carry tremendous power. Words matter. Okay, so if someone would cast a spell on you or like a curse, you would actually be afraid of being hurt and that it would happen. I think also, what?
Was it like freely given? It seems like it would be very restrictive. You wouldn't want to do that very often.
No, you would not. Yeah, you would not do that very often. Yeah, for sure. The curse was likely spoken publicly, so everyone would hear it, including the thief. So he would gather everyone and sort of like make a public ceremony out of it. Micah heard his own mother pronounce the curse. Imagine living under the fear that your mother's curse might actually come true. Eventually became frightened and he confessed, I took the silver. Okay, and once Micah confesses, something strange happens. Instead of remaining angry, she says, blessed be my son by the Lord. She immediately replaces the curse with a blessing. Why? Most Jewish commentators explain that once she knew who had taken it, she desperately wanted to cancel the curse she had unknowingly placed upon her son. She cannot simply erase spoken words, so she utters the opposite of blessing, kind of like to counter it. This reminds us, for example, and it reflects the ancient belief that blessings could counteract curses. This reminds us, like the book of Esther, that the king signs for Haman all the orders that you could go and kill all the Jews. So there's nothing that you could do about it. That cannot be canceled. Once that is sent out, it's a done deal. It was said by the king, it was stamped. The only way to do it is give power to the Jews to overturn it by getting back at their enemies.
Or
That's the
defending
only-
themselves.
By defending that, giving them the right to defend themselves, right?
Hanging them.
Yeah, and that's when they go and hang Haman and all. So notice something ironic. She repeatedly invokes God's name, yet what follows is completely against God's commandments. So here we're getting into something that I also mentioned last week. It's not really clear if this is idolatry or this is for the sake of the God of Israel. They feel like what they're doing is okay in God's eyes. What is the idol? The mother dedicates the silver to God, the God of Israel. So far this sounds good. But then she uses some of the silver to make a carved image, a molten image, and this is astonishing. This reminds us of the golden calf, right? Because she apparently believes she's honoring God through an idol. This is not necessarily worship of another deity like the Baal. And many scholars and traditional commentators think this represents an attempt to worship the God of Israel in an unauthorized way. In other words, is I believe in God, but I want to worship him my own way. And that is exactly what the Torah forbids. Good intentions do not justify improper worship. But Micah then builds a private shrine. It includes the idols and the ephod and the household gods, the teraphim, which are definitely idols. He even appoints one of his own sons as priest, and everything is backwards. God already chose the sanctuary in Shiloh, the priesthood from the family of Aaron. The sacrificial system is in the Torah, and Micah simply invents his own religion in that sense. Now, what's happening with the Levite? Let's summarize that one. Later, a young Levite from Bethlehem arrives.
Should I leave?
Yeah. The Levites belongs to the tribe set apart for religious service. And Micah is thrilled. Having an actual Levite gives legitimacy to his private sanctuary. He hires him as his personal priest. And notice the irony. Micah says, now I know the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite. He thinks religious appearances guarantee God's blessing. He completely ignores the fact that the entire arrangement violates God's law. Okay, he makes the priest like God's messenger. Okay, and that is also forbidden in the Torah. Human beings are not above the law. I'm sorry. What I meant to say, clergy is not above other human beings. Okay, and again, unlike other religions, okay, like in Christianity, the priest is above the other people. In Israel, the rabbi, the priest, no one is above other like the commoners. Everyone is equal in that sense. Okay.
Are all the Levites, I mean, other than here in Shiloh, or were they also scattered around?
They were scattered around, yeah. Now we go to the story of the tribe of Dan. The story shifts. The tribe of Dan has a problem. Originally, Dan received territory near the Mediterranean coast. Okay. Last week, I said I will show the map here. Let's see. Okay.
What's that?
Okay, here, the coast. You see the coast here? You see Dan, you see the orange part? Okay. This is where the tribe of Dan was. Where did they move to? They moved all the way here later on, I believe. I can't see. Oh no, sorry, here, Laish. This area here. You see where it says Dan, Laish? I don't like it's a little bit hard to see. But you see where my cursor is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's where they moved to.
How long did it take them to go?
A week.
A while. No, more than a week. Oh,
That's
sure.
scandals.
Yeah.
They went back.
So unfortunately, that land was occupied by strong Philistine cities and Amorite populations that never fully conquered its inheritance. And the story of Samson, now we understand more this context of the story of Samson, why he gets at the Philistines. We see the Philistines are all over. So the tribe of Dan is supposed to have their own territory, but the Philistines are there constantly oppressing them. So that's why you kind of like understand why they left that area. Instead of trusting God and continuing the struggle, many Danites decide to abandon their assigned territory. They send spies north to find easier land. This deliberately echoes the spies in Numbers. Again, Israel is exploring the land. Again, questions of faith arise. The Levite gives them a blessing. The Danite spies stop at Micah's house. They recognize the Levite's accent. They ask him, will our journey succeed? Instead of directing them to Shiloh, the legitimate temple, to inquire of God properly, the Levite simply tells them, go in peace. His blessing sounds official, but his entire priesthood is illegitimate.
And he didn't say anything. Go in peace doesn't mean it.
Well, he made it sound like you're going to succeed. Okay, go in peace, you will succeed. He made up an answer.
But they didn't go in
And
peace.
now they go to Laish. The spies discover a peaceful northern town called Laish. Okay, its people are isolated. They have no allies. They are unsuspecting. The Danites decide this will be much easier than fighting where God originally placed them. Dan steals Micah's religion. 600 Danite soldiers pass Micah's house. They steal the idols, the ephod, the teraphim, all the sacred objects. Then they persuade the Levite, wouldn't you rather be priest for an entire tribe than for one family? Okay, the Levite immediately agrees. His loyalty is not to God. Okay, it is to prestige and opportunity. And he simply changes employers. Okay, whoever pays him the most, that's where he's going to go. Micah chases after them. His complaint is almost humorous and tragic. He says, you took my gods. What do I have left? So think about that sentence. If your God can be carried away by someone else, how powerful is that God, right? The narrative exposes the absurdity of idolatry without even commenting directly. Just by laying out the story, we understand, like, you stole your mother's money, you created gods, which means you tried to steal God's real idea of being everywhere. You tried to make this thing a God. Now it's stolen from you, from your profitable temple, and you're complaining? It's like, how more absurd could this be, right? So now the Danites conquer Laish. They rename it Dan. There they establish Micah's idols permanently, and this becomes an alternative worship center. Instead of going to Shiloh, people now have another shrine. Now we could also understand the great distance, okay? Because if we see, again, our map, Shiloh is right here, okay? Dan is all the way at the end of the kingdom of the Israelites here. This, like, every time they're going to travel, I would guess more than a week. This will probably be 2-3 weeks of traveling the hillside, going, lodging.
That wasn't serious.
Yeah. This would be a long trip. It's a big commitment to do each time, right?
Especially with children, women, and whatever
Right.
goods they had.
Exactly. Eventually, centuries later, after the kingdom divided, Yerovam would establish official royal sanctuaries at Dan and Bethel with golden calves. Judges 18 foreshadows that later religious fragmentation. So now we come to the big question that was also asked before. Were there competing temples? So strictly speaking, there was only one legitimate sanctuary, Shiloh, where the Mishkan stood under divine authorization. I think I mentioned to you, I was there once on a trip, and you really see the remains of the ancient city there, which is fascinating. Micah's shrine was not a temple approved by God. It was a private sanctuary that imitated the Mishkan while violating the Torah. When the tribe of Dan adopted Micah's shrine, they created a competing place of worship. It competed in practice with Shiloh, but it had no divine legitimacy. That is precisely the point of the story. People replaced God's chosen place with worship designed according to their own preferences. Okay. Now let's talk about tribal rivalries. That was also asked before. There's no direct war between Ephraim and Dan in these chapters. However, underlying tensions exist. Micah lives in Ephraimite territory. The Danites simply rob him. No tribe comes to his defense. The story reflects a period when tribal unity is collapsing. Okay, so Joshua was holding all the tribes together. Now they're disassembling.
It's in it a little bit more than that. It's not only that the tribes within were falling apart, but the tribal system of the Israelites was no longer working.
Right. So again, this is setting, what you're saying is true, and this is again setting the grounds for the need for a king that would bring all the people of Israel together, because each tribe increasingly acts independently. If we read the book of Judges carefully, we see every tribe has an issue, and then a leader emerges. But what happens with the other tribes? We usually don't know. Sometimes we hear like Deborah calls all the tribes of Israel to war. Only a few go with her. Most of them remain back home. It's like, nah, it's like it's your business. So that unity of a nation doesn't always work. And the common covenant is weakening. Instead of functioning as one nation centered around God's sanctuary, Israel becoming a collection of tribes pursuing their own interest. And why this story matters? This story is not mainly about idols, it is about something deeper. Everyone believes that they are serving God. Micah invokes God. His mother invokes God. The Levite invokes God. The Danites ask for God's blessing, yet almost every religious decision they make contradict God's instructions. The message is that sincere faith is not enough if it is disconnected from God's covenant. Religion cannot simply be invented according to personal preference or convenience. That is why the narrator ends this section by reminding us that Israel had no central leadership and no shared commitments to God's law. When everyone did what was right in his own eyes, political disorder was accompanied by spiritual disorder. The tragedy of Judges 17:18 is not merely idolatry, it is the gradual replacement of covenantal obedience with self-made religion, setting the stage for many of the struggles that would continue throughout Israel's history. So this is kind of like the bottom line of these chapters. And
There's an interesting, I think, similarity. There were 13 colonies.
oh,
And when they made a revolution, there were still 13 colonies.
okay, interesting point.
Took a while to bring them
But
together.
Right.
the 13 agreed on certain principles. And because they agreed on certain principles, that was different than just 13 colonies.
Well, they had England to worry about.
Interesting, yeah.
Self-interest.
Yeah.
Is kind of what.
But in any event, here we go back to the story. Wait. Okay, so the Jerusalem Talmud in Brachot chapter 9 says about, the grandson of Moses. Rabbi Huna said in the name of Rabbi Shimon, who said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman. Regarding the verse, Jonathan, son of Gershon, son of Menashe, the letter Nun is suspended. If he was worthy, he was the son of Moses. If not, he was the son of Menashe. The colleagues asked Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman, was he a priest to idolatry and yet lived a long life? Okay, how could that be? Okay, so this kind of like goes with the whole thing of the grandson, okay, and they're kind of like saying, okay, he was, when he behaved according to God's will, he was the grandson of Moses. If not, he would be like the grandson of Menashe. Menashe was a king who was bad, who did not worship God properly. So they're trying to kind of like explain why the nun, the extra nun is there and added in that sense.
So is the nun there in the actual Torah script?
It's inserted like,
It still is in the Torah?
not, well, this is not the Torah, this is like the book of Judges.
Right, but I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, so now let's go a little bit back to these stories of that we read, okay? In Exodus, we read Moses agreed to stay with a man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah as a wife. In Hebrew, it's Vayoel Moshe. And in Judges, what we read is the Levite agreed to stay with the man, okay? And the young man became like one of his sons. So we have a similar situation where in the book of Exodus, Moses agrees to stay with Jethro, okay? And in the book of Judges, the Levite agrees to stay with the man, and he becomes like his son. And also Jethro becomes like Moses's father-in-law, right? Because he marries his daughter. So the two verses are intentionally striking because they use almost identical language, inviting the reader to compare the two stories. Why does the similar language matter? The repetition is almost certain deliberate. The author of Judges expects readers to hear the echo of the earlier story of Moses. In Exodus 2:21, Moses arrives as a refugee in Midian after fleeing Egypt. He's welcomed into the home of Jethro, where he begins the journey that will eventually lead him to become Israel's greatest leader and the giver of the Torah. His decision to agree to stay, Vayoel Lashevet, marks the beginning of a life devoted to God's mission. And in Judges 17:11, another Levite, who according to rabbinic tradition is Jonathan, the grandson of Moses, also agrees to stay, Vayoel Alevi Lashevet. And they're both Levites, Moses and his grandson. But this decision leads in the opposite direction. Instead of entering a household that will prepare him to serve God, he joins Micah's private shrine, accepts payment to be its priest, and ultimately becomes the priest of the idolatrous sanctuary established by the tribe of Dan. The literally echo becomes even more powerful if the Levite is indeed Moses' grandson, as suggested in Jerusalem Talmud and other rabbinic sources. The book of Judges subtly invites us to compare the grandson with his grandfather. Both begin with the same words, but their lives take opposite paths. This is a common biblical literary technique known as typesing or verbal allusion. My mother uses that a lot in her commentary as well. By repeating unusual wording, the Bible encourages readers to compare two stories and notice both their similarities and their differences. The lesson is profound. Family heritage alone does not determine one's destiny. Even the grandson of Moses must choose whether to follow in his grandfather's footsteps or chart his own course. Moses' agreement to stay became the first step towards redemption. Jonathan's agreement to stay became the first step towards religious corruption. Okay, so it's like a very big lesson. Everyone chooses their own path.
Yeah, but Moses, I mean, when he went initially, he thought that's where he would live out his life. And, at the beginning, when God calls him, he says, no, I'm not
Right,
the one. I
right.
mean, it wasn't like he grasped it.
And this guy doesn't hesitate for
No.
1 second, right? He sees the money. Show me the money. Okay. And the parallel also reinforces one of the central messages of Judges 17:18. In a generation where everyone did what was right in his own eyes, even those with the greatest spiritual pedigree could lose their way if they abandoned God's covenant. Okay, so everyone could be like that. One more thing I wanted to talk about by a friend of calling of mine, Gila Wachman, who's a Bible scholar. In response to the question about Micah, the sages explain from Gerab, which is Micah's hometown, to Shiloh, the location of the tabernacle was 3 mills, like 3, I think, Roman miles, not far. The smoke from the altar service in Shiloh and the smoke from Micah's idol mingled with one another. Okay, the barbecues interacted. The ministering angels wanted to push him away, but the Holy One, blessed be he, said to them, leave him alone, for his bread is available to travelers. Okay, we see Micah is welcoming guests. Idolatry, he's doing the wrong thing, but he's still very welcoming. Every guest that walks around, we see, he welcomes them, right? The answer concerning the young Levite is presented as a conversation between members of the tribe of Dan who arrive at Micah's house and the young man. They said to him, are you not descended from Moses, and yet you serve as a priest for idolatry? He replied, this is the tradition I received from my grandfather's household. A person should rather hire himself out to idolatry than become dependent on other people. So this is also fascinating. The rabbis always like to switch things, okay? They want to like kind of, the Talmud explains that one who places the welfare of others above his own interest, whether by showing hospitality and providing food for travelers, or by refusing to support himself through charity, is shown extraordinary divine consideration. According to this teaching, even so grave as a sin as idolatry may be forgiven because of these exceptional acts of kindness. So the rabbis want to say, okay, it's like terrible people, okay? Moses, they go and they, his grandson, lets people hire him for pay and worship in the wrong place. And Micah is doing all these idols. But let's look at the positive things that these people have to offer. They offer bread, food, a place of rest for people who are traveling, okay? Or Moses' grandson, okay, is not relying on other people's gifts. He hires himself, even, so he's not dependent on other people. So the Bible, the rabbis try to find some kind of like a twist, something good from these stories, which is an interesting perspective. And it kind of like breaks the whole pattern of what we were talking about until now. But this is what's so beautiful about Judaism. You can always look at everything from different perspectives, and even idolatry, okay, under some circumstances has some justification. We don't have to agree, but the rabbis want us to, they always challenge us to think